Welcome, I'm Maury Povich, and today we will find out which civil rights groups had the most effective strategies in the civil rights movement. And we have the KKK, the SCLC, and the White Citizens Council, and the NAACP, and the Black Panther and Diggins for Self-Defense groups coming here today. And first we have the KKK and the White Citizens Council to talk about the group. And here is the KKK representative, Tillman.
Hello.
So, Tillman, what are your organizational beliefs?
Our organization believes that the white people are the pure people. We are placed by God above everyone else. It's our job to protect our pure race.
So, Tillman, what was your strategy during the civil rights movement?
We always used violence. I mean, it's the answer to everything.
Hey, no, that's not nice.
I know. We simply wanted to rid the world of impure races. We were against black voting and rights.
So, Tillman, why do you believe you had the most effective strategy?
It's most effective because it enforced us as a dominant race, and it instills fear in the less dominant races.
That's interesting. So, why do you feel like what effect did you have on the civil rights movement?
We pretty much scared off the white people who would support their cause, and we also scared some of the blacks in not taking part of the civil rights movement as they feared us.
That's quite interesting, Tillman. So why don't you head backstage while we bring up the White Citizens Council?
Okay, thank you.
And now here's the White Citizens Council representative, Howard.
Hello, sir.
So Howard, share the history of the White Citizens Council with us.
We were established in Greenwood, Mississippi in 1954 after Brown versus Board of Education. We were established to try to boost the white supremacy. We basically had the same exact beliefs as the KKK, but we obviously had more effective strategies than they did.
So Howard, what were your effective strategies for the White Citizens Council?
Well, we had a newspaper to spread word about white children having to spend class time with African American children. We were hoping to enrage them, and it did so to some extent.
That's interesting.
We tried to educate the white people.
What effect did you have on the civil rights movement, Howard, and your group?
We recruited people who were against the integration of society, and we threatened their economic standpoint instead of making people who believed in integration fear for their lives. We threatened their jobs and not seen as the bad Klan, and we could be followed by normal people who did not want to resort to violence.
That's interesting. Why do you feel like you had the most effective strategy, Howard?
We did not cause people to fear us and participate in illegal activities that would harm innocent people, like the KKK would do. We provided a way for normal people who did not relish the idea of the destruction of the innocent, which allowed us to focus on stopping support for integration by threatening their job, which is how people provided their family.
Well, Howard, at least your way was more peaceful than the KKK's. Now, please head backstage.
Okay, thank you for having me on your show.
No problem. And now welcome a member from the Diggins of Self-Defense, Ernest, to the stage. Hello.
Hi.
It's nice to have you here.
It's our pleasure.
So, Ernest, tell us about your organization's history.
We were an armed self-defense African American civil rights organization. We were formed in order to fight the KKK should the need arise. We were started in Jonesboro, Louisiana, and led by Ernest Thomas and Frederick Douglass Kirkpatrick. Most deacons were war veterans with combat experience in the Korean War or World War II. Eventually, we formed 21 chapters in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and we confronted the KKK at Belusa. And we were instrumental in forcing the federal government to intervene on behalf of the black community and enforce the 1964 Civil Rights Act and neutralize the Klan.
That's very interesting. So what was the reason you were established?
We were established to provide self-defense against the KKK for Black communities who were harassed by the KKK's terrorism tactics, which destroyed lives. Also to enforce federal laws that the federal government would not enforce in the Deep South.
What effect did you have on that?
Self-defense!
Well, that was interesting.
As I was saying, we help provide security for Black people and the nonviolent marches due to the fact that the federal government was inadequate to provide these things to the Black people. We also made the government enforce more of the laws they had made when we started fighting against the KKK in self-defense. We help provide people with a little sense of comfort in the fact that they had protection against the KKK.
I'm sorry about that rude interruption, but thank you for continuing. What do you feel like you had the most important strategy?
We
Ernest.
finally caused the government to give Black people help in enforcing the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which was not enforced at all in the Deep South. We also provided protection for all of those who did non-violent marches as we could be trusted. Unlike the federal government security measures, we also worked in self-defense, which was key as we only protected Blacks when the KKK came about to strike for violence.
That's very interesting. Well, now why don't you head backstage while we bring out our next guest.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And now welcome our final guest from the SCLC, Rosemary. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So what does the SCLC stand for?
SCLC stands for Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
So tell me about your conference.
Our conference was a non-sectarian American agency established by Martin Luther King Jr. and some of his followers in 1957 in Atlanta, Georgia. The purpose of our agency was to coordinate and assist local organizations that were working for the full equality of African Americans. As fellow Americans ourselves, we strongly believe that regardless of color, every American should have equal opportunities.
That's very nice. So Rosemary, what were your strategies during the Civil Rights Movement?
We operated as a nonviolent group to end legal and social discrimination against African Americans. As a group, we were able to organize and sponsor many protests, marches, and demonstrations during the 1950s and 1960s. In 1955, we were able to hold a successful boycott of buses in Montgomery, Alabama. In all of our efforts, we were able to secure racial desegregation, voting rights, and other advantages for African Americans.
Rosemary, why do you feel like you had the most effective strategy?
We were the most successful because we were able to secure the most rights for the African American community. Although our president was assassinated in April of 1968, we were able to stay a strong conference. Our group continued to work with the new president, Joseph E. Lowry, after King's death to continue to work for the improvement of African American lives. We also were able to create successful campaigns against drug abuse and crime.
That's very interesting. Rosemary, thank you for joining us. Now head backstage while we bring out our other groups.
Thank you for having us.
Now please welcome our final groups to the stage. We have the nonviolence groups of the NAACP and the SCLC. Please welcome the NAACP member, Inobi, to the stage.
It's nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. So what does the NAACP stand for?
NAACP stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
That's very interesting. So tell me about your association.
Well, we were established in 1909 by a group of multiracial activists to ensure equality throughout for every minority group. We were actually originally called the National Negro Committee. We began fighting in 1910 when we fought the Pink Franklin case. We continued to fight cases, not winning, but just showing our presence. We began to speak up against segregation and pressuring presidents. Our big case was in 1954 in the Brown versus the Board of Education, showing that separate but equal schools really weren't separate. We protested and made our voices heard.
That's very good of you guys to do. What about your civil rights movements?
Well, we started in 1954 with the Brown versus the Board of Education. Then in 1955, when Rosa Parks was arrested for not sitting in the back of the bus, we helped boycotting the bus's spark. We also defended her in court. In 1964, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, ending our 8-year battle with Supreme Court. Also, freedmen's schools were established in Mississippi,
In 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, and we registered more than 80,000 African Americans to vote. We later went to the Civil Rights Acts of 1968, passed as well.
That's very good of you guys to do. What were your strategies during the Civil Rights Movement?
We used civil disobedience, which is the combination of direct action and nonviolence resistance.
Why do you believe you had the most effective strategy in Novi?
We had the most effective strategy during the Civil Rights Movement because we used civil disobedience. We were able to get our point across, in my opinion, to get the most accomplished by not being threatening. Nobody wanted to mess with us, but we weren't a group that you had to worry about becoming violent or going to kill someone.
Well, thank you for joining us here today. Now please head backstage while we bring out our final guest.
Thank you.
I will talk to a self-defense representative in the Black Panther party group thing, and Chaka.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you here. So tell me, Chaka, what are your reasons for existing? Just when and when you were established. And we have heard so many different things, and I'm sure they're getting confused with what they really are.
Yeah, well, we were established because we believe that Black people living in the ghetto should have self-defense against police brutality. Many officers have beaten and abused Blacks for unacceptable reasons. We wanted to stop that. In October of 1996 in Oakland, California, Hugh Newton and Robbie Seale founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense.
That's very cool. Chaka, how did you first stop police brutality?
We practiced militant self-defense of minority communities against the U.S. government and fought to establish revolutionary socialism through mass organizing and community-based programs. We did this by patrolling the streets with guns and law books, trying to keep police away from our area. And when they came too close and there was a confrontation, it usually resulted in shootings. The party was one of the first organizations in U.S. history to militantly struggle for ethnic minority and working class emancipation.
You guys were very brave. Was that what you were wanting to do? Have that much violence?
Well, we really didn't know what was going to happen, but we weren't afraid to make it violent. We wanted to show that we were going to stand up for ourselves and are no longer afraid to defend our people and ourselves. We were one of the most powerful movements for social change since the Revolution of 1776 and the Civil War. We were one of the few Black organizations in the entire history of Black struggle that were against slavery and oppression in the United States, that was armed and promoted a revolutionary agenda, and I represent the last great movement by Black people for equality, justice, and freedom.
You're the
reason we made this organization, because you attacked Black people. If I had a gun here, you would be dead right now. If I had a gun.
Ours is definitely better. Guys, no violence. No violence.
But
non-violence is the way. I
But we
know
provided
violence
protection
is
for you.
good. I know protection is good, but come on, guys.
You guys
provided
are
protection for you guys
Violence
too.
is not the way, guys. Violence is not the way.
Now please welcome the KKK and the White Citizens Council representatives to the stage.
We, the people in the White Citizens Council, had a much more civilized way of getting our message out and getting people to understand and support our cause. Instead of using senseless violence, we educated people on the facts of what integration can do in their lives and why Black civil rights was a bad idea.
The White Citizens Council is stupid. It's obvious the KKK had a greater movement.
Yeah!
Just because
Security.
the KKK
Security.
didn't have...
Calm down, people.
While those other groups will be escorted from the premises, the new groups, the Black Panther and the Deacons of Self-Defense will be coming on stage. And here they come. Unfortunately, due to Chaka, we have lost two of our organizations due to untimely circumstances.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so envelope is brought here. Okay, and now. Oh, and the KKK wins.
Are you crazy?
KKK was the most effective due to the fact that, well, they were violent. That's all they needed. Okay, and now tune in next week to see who the baby of Tyrone is.